Well, here we are, boys and girls, back again with our knockout stage predictions for the 2023 Gold Cup. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. As always, Matty G here with you. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and please let us know down in the comments as well your predictions for this 2023 Gold Cup. So without further ado, let's get started. And just a little update from our group stage video that we released a couple of days ago. As you can see, the teams that are in gold are the teams that we have advancing out of these four groups. And that is very important, as well as knowing which teams finish where in each of their groups, considering who they'll play in the knockout stages. So just a reminder, the United States, we have winning Group A with Jamaica finishing second. In Group B, we've got Mexico advancing as the number one team there with Qatar as the runners-up. We've got Costa Rica just narrowly beating out Panama for the first place spot in Group C. And then Group D, we've got Canada as number one with Guatemala coming in second. And with that being said, guys, there's our knockout stage bracket and what it would look like if our predictions are correct. We've got Canada versus Jamaica, Mexico facing Panama, the United States versus Guatemala, and then Costa Rica taking on Qatar. Now, what we'll go ahead and do from here is just give you a little bit of background information on each of these matchups, what to expect potentially, and then from there we'll give you our predictions in the next slide for our semifinalists and then our final and moving forward. So with that being said, we've got Jamaica versus Canada in this first matchup. Jamaica have actually beaten Canada the last two times they faced off in the Gold Cup in 2015 and 2017. However, they have not scored in their last three appearances against the Canadian side, which is certainly disappointing. They even lost to Qatar today 2-1 in an exhibition. Not a great deal of confidence for this Jamaican side moving forward into this competition, so we'll see how things fare in the next couple of weeks. As for Canada, again, they had a great run in World Cup qualifying, but again, a very disappointing group stage, sending them home early. But again, Canada with so many attacking options that they can just come after you with for a full 90 minutes and beyond if need be. So a very intriguing matchup there, considering Jamaica's gotten the better of them the last two times they faced off during this competition. But again, Canada coming in still in pretty decent form with a very solid squad and a team potentially that could go and win this entire thing. As for Mexico and Panama, they drew in September of 2021 during World Cup qualifying. However, Mexico before that won the 5 previous meetings between these two. Panama did beat Mexico in the Gold Cup in 2013. However, again, that was a decade ago. This is a much different Panama side. Again, this team finished just 4 points behind Costa Rica in World Cup qualifying, so they had a decent run, but we have certainly not seen them have success against Mexico anywhere besides in their own turf. And considering this entire competition, of course, will be played in the United States, it doesn't suit Panama very well. Obviously, Panama is going to be up to the task, but again, despite all the potential changes and things surrounding this Mexican national team with their roster, new manager, etc., Mexico's still going to come out and perform, and they're going to perform incredibly well, in my opinion, and give everybody their best effort for sure. So a very intriguing matchup there as well. In terms of the United States and Guatemala, they haven't played each other since 2016. The U.S. did lose to them, however, in 2016 on their road to missing the 2018 World Cup, which was a pretty pivotal moment during that cycle. Before that, the last time Guatemala beat the United States was in 1984. So it's going to take something pretty magical for Guatemala to get by the United States in this quarterfinal. But again, considering the roster that the U.S. is bringing, obviously not their top tier list, anything is possible. So we'll see what happens with that one. In terms of Costa Rica and Qatar, these two teams have only met once. That was in 2020, and they drew 1-1. I think this is going to be, in my opinion, the best potential matchup that we'll see in the quarterfinals, just considering what Costa Rica can bring. Obviously, they can sway back and forth. They have a lot of ups and downs sometimes, but this is still a very good team when they're on it and when they're on their game. And they have some great players in their side that could do a ton of damage, as you could see from how they played in the World Cup. Obviously, terrible outing against Spain, but then they come back and play incredibly well against Japan and Germany. Very, very exciting team. And a team I think that is very hungry to potentially finally get some some hardware in this competition, considering the only three that have really done it in the modern era are Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Costa Rica have kind of been waiting in the wings behind those three and would certainly love to finally get their name etched in history this time round. As for Qatar, remember a nice run into the semifinals back in 2021 before getting beat out by the U.S. They're coming in strong. Again, they beat Jamaica today in an exhibition. New manager, maybe a new look for this roster as well. It's going to be a very difficult side to play against. And I think they are certainly eager to come back here to the U.S. and face off against these CONCACAF foes, teams that they feel like that they are pretty comparable against. And there's our first run of predictions, guys. We've got Canada beating Jamaica, Mexico taking down Panama, the United States cruising past Guatemala, and a very tough decision, but we've got Costa Rica edging out Qatar for that final semifinal spot. And there you have it, 4 CONCACAF foes facing off against one another once again in this Gold Cup semifinal, and that's what it looks like. So let's go ahead and get to these potential matchups. Canada versus Mexico. Remember, Canada took 4 points away from Mexico during World Cup qualifying. They beat them in Mexico, took a draw against them at the Azteca, which is certainly impressive for any team. However, before that great run in World Cup qualifying, Canada had not beaten Mexico since 2000, which just so happened to be the last time Canada, and the only time Canada has won this competition was in that year 2000. So again, a very intriguing matchup considering, again, these two teams, Canada have been on the rise in recent years, really looking to become a big powerhouse and certainly, put their name in lights on the international stage, not just for CONCACAF, but for everyone else in the world to see. And as for Mexico, certainly not quite the same dominant side that we've seen in recent years, but a team that is still trying to work through some kinks, work through some cracks and stuff, difficulties that they've had, and try and return to their superb form that we usually always see them in. As for the United States and Costa Rica, a very interesting matchup as well. Costa Rica did win the last game that these two faced off against one another. Remember, that was the last game of World Cup qualifying. The U.S. would have had to have lost, I believe, by like 6 or 7 goals. Still, not a great look for the U.S. to lose their final World Cup qualifying game, even though they did advance and qualify for the tournament. They did have a 4-game win streak against Costa Rica before that matchup. However, 3 of those games were just international friendlies. So it doesn't bode well that the U.S. haven't played them in a lot of competitive matches recently, besides qualifying in terms of just knockout fixtures. Obviously, Costa Rica have done fairly well against them in those types of environments and would certainly be chomping at the bit to get after the United States, not only to spoil their own run on their own turf, but considering the fact that the U.S. did beat them out for that last automatic qualifying spot based off just goal differential back in the fall. So a very, very intriguing matchup there as well for the U.S. and Costa Rica. But again, obviously, I think the U.S. maybe has a slight advantage considering they are on home turf, even with maybe a subpar roster compared to what we're used to seeing. And just like that, we are on to our final. We've got Canada advancing past Mexico and the United States just getting by Costa Rica for a great final in terms of these two. Again, some great semifinals as well, but this is what we've got. The Canada-United States matchup, which I believe a lot of CONCACAF followers would love to see. The United States have certainly been king of the castle, in my opinion, of CONCACAF as of late, considering the trophies that they've won. However, certainly a lot of Canadian fans would argue that it's their side who have been the kings as well, considering their great run in World Cup qualifying. I think that this would be a phenomenal matchup to see, considering I think these two have been the best 2 sides in recent years for CONCACAF, leading the way. And to see them be able to challenge against one another for some hardware and certainly some big bragging rights would be huge, not only for CONCACAF, but especially just this entire continent and confederation as we move forward towards a 2026 World Cup on this soil. So with that being said, of course, that means we would have a Mexico and Costa Rica third place matchup, which would always be a very chippy, exciting game, in my opinion, back and forth, potentially a lot of goals, a lot of counterattacking, a lot of space on that field. So some really mouth-watering matchups if this were to be the case with the Canadian and American final, and then Mexico versus Costa Rica in the third place match. So with that being said, let's see who wins it all. And as much as it breaks my heart as an American and a huge supporter, of course, of the U.S. men's national team, I do have Canada edging out the United States for the Gold Cup final. Of course, I do have the United States winning the Nations League final for CONCACAF here coming up, but again, just for myself at the moment, I feel like Canada just has a lot of potential for a fantastic run all the way to this final. And again, I think playing certainly with the chip on their shoulder as well, considering they do feel like that they have been the kings of CONCACAF as of late and are wanting to prove that even more and more to the rest of their rivals. And this would be a huge step in the right direction to doing that, especially being able to take down Mexico and the United States, in one-off knockout fixtures to win a title and some hardware, which would be their second Gold Cup title in history. Again, this final could go either way, in my opinion, but considering I do have these two facing off in the Nations League final, I had the U.S. winning in that. I think if that is the case here, with the semifinals being played tonight and the final later this week, if the U.S. are able to beat them, then again, that just brings even more potential life out of the Canadians looking to get revenge on the U.S. once this Gold Cup final comes around a month or so later. And in terms of the third place match, I do have Mexico just edging out Costa Rica. It could be a phenomenal game with hopefully 4, 5, 6 goals maybe in that one. I could potentially see that with the U.S. and Canada as well, to be honest. And certainly I would hope that is the case with these games, that we see open games with a lot of attacking options, a lot of the ball moving forward, being direct, being physical, and just grinding out the result with whatever it takes. Certainly hope that these games don't go to penalties. Nothing against penalties. Obviously, that would create great drama and a fantastic finish. But would love to see these teams be able to battle it out in 90 minutes or 120 and come to a champion decision. Again, Canada have beaten the U.S. Back during World Cup qualifying. They took 4 points off the U.S., which would be huge if they could kind of continue that superb form that they've had. The U.S. did beat Canada, however, remember, in the group stage back in 2021. I think Shaq Moore scored an early goal in that one, and then it was a pretty dull game after that. So hopefully we don't see anything like that again. But for right now, my decision has been made, and it is Canada who I believe takes the Gold Cup crown here. Guys, thanks so much, as always, for joining us. We really appreciate your support. And again, guys, please let me know down in the comments section as well who you guys think might get to these finals. Give me your predictions. Anything you got, please. I love your opinions. Love hearing from you. And would love to see what you've got down there in that comment section. Once again, guys, I can't reiterate it more. Thank you again so much for your support. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We've got plenty more content coming with our predictions for the World Cup for the women's side in July. Some featured stories on different national teams and just different things about the game, both in the past and future moving forward. Our Football with Flags World Cup is still going on, so keep in tune with those games as they get displayed on the channel as well. And of course, so much more beyond that with the international game. We just love international soccer and the opportunity to represent your country and seeing these men and women, fight for their flags and fight with their crests on their chest and playing for their national teams in the beautiful game that we love. So again, thanks as always so much for supporting us and watching these videos. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later. Peace out.